I always love starting with this slide for a couple reasons. I mean, for years we've all been hearing about, the explosion of data, but usually when we talk about it, we talk about how much data is being created from a structured standpoint. And what's interesting is about 80% of all of the new data that's being created, if not higher, is unstructured. So it becomes a little bit more of a challenge, not just to how do I search through all that data, but then how do I use it beyond just search? How do I do analytics on the unstructured data the same way I do around structured data? And interestingly enough, even though 80+% of all this data that's being created is unstructured, only about 8% of that data is actually used by organizations today. So we're collecting huge amounts of data that is sitting idle and not adding any value to us. And this is where IBM Watson comes in. So I'm assuming that most people have heard the name Watson, but you may or may not know really what it is. And truthfully, Watson is a brand within IBM. It's not a particular machine. It's not a particular solution, a particular technology. It is a brand. And under that brand, we have a variety of different capabilities and services. But they can pretty much be summarized down into these 4 areas. Starting on the upper right, engagement. How do you engage with clients, with customers, with users, internal or external, in new ways? And, being able to do things using natural language, regardless of the language, being able to interact both with voice as well as text, to be able to engage in a dialogue, as opposed to just filling out questionnaires or searching through FAQs. How do you answer questions and not only provide an answer, but provide answers that you have a level of confidence in? That's part of what we do within the Watson brand. Help people make decisions, where you know an answer, you know the question you want, but now you want to evaluate the data that you have, both structured and unstructured, against that question and use that to help determine how to make a decision. For example, being able to compare a insurance claim against insurance policies to be able to determine is that claim covered without having to manually read through an entire policy to do that. How do we give people new tools that aid them in this decision-making process? How do we help them explore all that unstructured data, where, again, I have an idea of the question I want, but I don't know what data is available that's helping me answer that question. So I want to explore through a large amount of unstructured and structured data. An example of that in the medical field, which is where we've got started with Watson Technologies. There are so many medical journals and articles that come out that if a doctor were to read every journal that applies to them, it would take them 2 years of 7x24 reading to read 1 year's worth of material. Obviously you can't do that. So what we're trying to do is give you technologies that can ingest that information for you and not just search through it, but allow you to then do analytics on it. And then finally, discovery. How do I use the data I have to uncover new insights where I don't really know what the question is I'm asking yet? I just know that I have the data and I want to find out what that data can provide to me. So Watson technology works in all 4 of these areas. Watson Explorer in particular is focused on the exploration and discovery side of things. And throughout this presentation, I'm going to go through a number of slides fairly quickly, and then I'm going to do some short demonstrations so that you can actually see what the product brings to the table. It's always, for me, easier when somebody shows me something as opposed to just telling me about it. So Watson Explorer is one of the solutions within the Watson portfolio. This is an on-premise solution, so it runs on your infrastructure, whether that infrastructure is physically in your site, being hosted by a third party, or running in a public or private cloud off-prem somewhere. Basically it's your infrastructure that it's running on. And it's focused on doing exploration, analysis, and interpretation of data, focusing on both search and content analytics, leveraging cognitive computing capabilities, being able to deal with both on-premise and cloud-based data, structured and unstructured, all together.